It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belghast, and let's start the show.
Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 380. Tonight I'm joined by Ammo.
Hello.
Ashgar.
Did you know there's a Kirby demo?
Kodra.
Arise, you tarnished?
Tam.
Why is it always ambush?
And Thalen.
Hello.
So we do a lot of things when we talk about like games that just came out. And so there's a game that I beta tested for a while and then tried the demo and had been shocked about how little discussion was going on about it because it's essentially a looter slasher. And everybody likes a Destiny style looter slasher, right? It's Babylon's Fall from Square Enix and also developed by Platinum Games. So like you would think that's pretty decent pedigree. On release,
that brought you near.
On release day, there was a peak concurrency on Steam of 350 players.
Ooh.
I was going to say, I haven't heard a lot of advertisement for this game.
Like, I don't think I
Correct.
heard about this
That's
game
correct.
at all until, yesterday when, Bell brought it up?
Yeah. I mean, like, I was... Over the course of this year, I had been in a couple different phases of the beta because I thought, oh, hey, that's a decent pedigree. I like looter games. This might be down my alley. But no. So
It is not actually very good, apparently.
It
No,
doesn't
it's-
look like it.
So, like, it honestly is the sort of game you expect would have come out on a PlayStation 3.
It does look like some of the PS3 launch games.
It does. It does. It has, like, chunky pixelated hair, really low res muddy textures.
Ooh.
Hilarious gold popping out of the enemies animations.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't know what went wrong here. Apparently, Platinum is really proud of it. I'm confused
Okay.
by that statement. Like last I had seen, it had gotten up to a peak concurrency of like 1,200 players. Maybe it's doing better in Japan than it is here. But yeah, like it's weird the way that this game has crash landed. Giant, like Ash linked me a thing from Giant Bomb, and they were trying to think of a single game that has left a worse impression than this game has. So yeah, I mean and to make it even worse, like it's a $60 game, but apparently it is riddled with microtransactions. It's got a battle pass and it's got like a bunch of other microtransactions built into it, and it like pops them up constantly. So I don't know what went wrong here. But it does make me wonder if Square knew it wasn't going to be well received and spent zero marketing dollars on it. If you're one of our listeners and are playing it, I would be curious to find out why. The demo exists, so you can try it. I tried it. It did not improve over beta.
Oh,
So next up, I hear there's some Craftworld Eldar.
Yeah. So you may have heard me go on about how much of a mess the 40K meta is right now because there's a mess. But there's some really interesting stuff going on. Where one of the biggest problems with 40K for a very long time is like there's a good faction and there's a bunch of junk. And even within the good faction, there's like the three things that are good. And so the Eldar Craftworld's Codex just released today. And it's another one of these, for the most part, their designers are actually thinking about their game. And I really appreciate that for once. There's been this problem with Eldar Codexes for a while where it's like, hey, here is the good thing. If you are able to bring so many of these good things that no one else can deal with it, you win. And everybody hates it. It's miserable because here's the one thing that you have to beat. It's obviously too good. You run it until you can't anymore. And it's just like, it's one of those min-maxing the fun out of the game. for competitive purposes.
Yeah.
And one of the things that has been kind of a hallmark of the latest edition has been they really want to make multiple different things good and have a role, and they've been surprisingly successful at it.
There have been some missteps as well where they
Absolutely
tried too hard and everything in a faction is good.
Yes. Yes, they have had the top end competitive meta is a disaster at the moment. It has gone from one disaster to another disaster to somehow two disasters at once. But the actual books they're releasing are fun, interesting. They're neat to build lists with. Once they're tuned to be more reasonable, they're actually really fun to play with and against. And so I'm excited. One of the big things that they did with this Craftworlds thing is they made all of the aspect warriors actually reasonable, which I don't think has been true maybe ever, not since the 90s at the least. Along with updating models for those aspect warriors, which means that models that are older than a significant portion of the players in the game are getting updates for the first time in like 2.5 decades.
So for reference, the aspect models came out when I was in high school.
Yeah.
The aspects probably came out when I was in early high school, and the Phoenix Lords came out when I was in late high school. And for the most part, Eldar models had been locked in since then.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a few more Warp Seers models so that they didn't have the one model. They had a couple options, but the funny thing with Eldar, though, is like also they used to be grossly overpowered, but it was also just a sign that you spent literally 4 times as much money on your army as anyone else did.
Yeah.
Because kitting out like all of the because basically there was one way to play Eldar that was right back in the day, and that was to have a unit of every aspect and also the Phoenix Lord.
And I'm sitting here thinking, hey, Tim, haven't Aspect Warriors been extremely awful in 40K up till like yesterday?
Yes. Up until literally yesterday, aspects have been like
the laughingstock of 8th edition.
Basically.
Well, one of them anyway.
One of them. I mean, it's like there's model. It's one of those things where it's like for any kind of competitive optimization, there's the stuff you take if you want to win tournaments or just want to win competitively. There's the stuff that you can take if you really like it, and maybe some tournament players might use it because they really like it. There's stuff that you're taking solely because you like it, not because they're competitive. And there's stuff where even if you like it, you shouldn't take it because it's that bad. And that was Aspect Warriors. It was, I mean, and they're some of the most flavorful units in the game because they're the whole concept is you have this very martial or like very focused culture where all of the warriors focus on very specific things. And it's really neat having this very specific kind of panoply of color on the field. It's like one of the few times that it makes sense to actually paint your force in a whole bunch of different colors. And they just look really cool. But they've been in terrible old Finecast. The sculpts are bad. Like the sculpts, it's not the sculpts are bad. It's whether or not the sculpts were good, the molds and so forth are so worn that even if you weren't having them in Finecast, they would be bad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and they were super heavy models back in the day, so all of their poses are very well supported, for lack of a better term. They're very close and tight into the body.
Yep. And so they just they've got new Howling Banshees and new Dark Reapers and a brand new Janezar and Margan Ra, which are the Phoenix Lords. And they look really cool. I bought models with skulls on them today for like $170.
Wait, what?
They look cool. I want to support this, making every model in a book worthwhile.
I mean, Dark Reapers used to be a really good heavy unit.
Yeah, I mean, they have admittedly eaten some severe nerfs because the competitive list last edition for Eldar was How about Dark Reapers and Plains until you cannot take any more of either one of them? Nobody liked that. But no, it's been fun to flip through the book. It's really neat seeing them do new sculpts of very old models and capture the feel of them but make them modern.
I'm kind of curious to see how they make warp spiders work, because warp spiders have always been either really broken or useless.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a middle ground for them.
They figured I was flipping through them and they figured it out. Warp spiders are basically a highly mobile flamer unit, and it's a pretty good place for them. They're an excellent harassment unit. They also figured out how to make there's a thing called fortifications that you can basically bring a building with you to a fight, which is a cool concept, but mostly terrible. I think Age of Sigmar has also been doing this thing and has done a starkly better job of making you care about your faction terrain piece.
I mean, Age of Sigmar also doesn't make them have a points cost, which has its own problems.
It's true.
But you're basically playing down an option if you don't own the thing.
Yeah. And it's sort of an unpopular choice as a result. 40K has tried to release terrain pieces that anybody cares about and has failed until this book. And it might be too good, but also it's a webway gate, which is a thing you can plop down and deploy models close to it.
I thought people like the drone port for Tau.
I mean, I like the drone port for Tau, but I don't think people do. Tau have also been fixed.
Somehow. I wasn't expecting that.
I wasn't expecting Tau to be good this edition. Tau are currently too good this edition. It's that bit where I said it's two disasters at once. Yeah.
Yikes.
So the current 40K meta is a disaster where there's super ultra space marines sitting at a 73% win rate, Tau sitting at a 72.5% win rate, and Tyranids sitting at like a 64% win rate. And then
another thing I wouldn't have expected.
And then basically nobody else topping 50. It is not a healthy meta. But I don't play in tournaments, so I don't care. When you're not trying to play the game hyper competitively, it works super, super well. And honestly, it's kind of how I feel 40K works best anyway. But yes, like following tournament results is just an absolute mess at the moment. But anyway, I got into Craftworlds originally when I was like 9, and like I don't even know what was. I think the fanciest model they had at the time was a Dire Avenger. Maybe Warp Spiders had just come out.
Warp Spiders were the last of the aspects that they released.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking maybe Swooping Hawks. I don't know. Whatever it was old, but I thought they looked so cool, and I loved the idea of actually being like fast, and the game did not support that in any way at all. And this book is great, and all of these units that I've actually wanted to use are useful. So I'm going to be assembling and painting, and it's going to be fun. Plus, they're super fun to paint. Anything where I get to paint in like bright primary colors, it's so rare and so much fun.
The thing I always dug about the aspects, though, is there's two ways to do this. You can do aspect colors, or you can do Craftworld colors, or there are people that figure out ways to make the Craftworld colors look like the aspect colors.
Yes.
Which are really cool, because like it is a bunch of unique models on the field, but also a cohesive nature to them.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm doing. But yeah, no, it's really fun to see. Go get my bright red, my black, my bone, and some like egregious blues. They even kept the incredibly 80s hair from the Howling Banshees.
How could they not? That's like their defining trait, isn't it?
It's iconic.
Like that mask was cool as hell back in the day.
It's still cool as hell. It is legitimately cool as hell right now. Turns out stopping people from shooting you and making them fight slower is real strong. And it's a small bright spot in the absolute disaster that is minis gaming right now. Because boy.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of really cool stuff going on in minis, but a lot of it's not coming from the actual primary companies.
It's true.
It's all the little independent folks, releasing sculpts as part of Patreons and expecting you to print them out.
That
I
is
have bad
definitely
news
taken off as
for
a
you
thing in
about where
recent
the
years.
majority of that is happening.
So it's been a real weird week for me. I am apparently playing Guild Wars 2,
Welcome to Guild Wars
Hooray.
2.
and I am doing it in the least expected way possible.
Not
You're
playing the
technically
expansion.
playing a finger wiggler. Technically.
Technically, I am playing a Necromancer.
I mean, arguably one of the tankiest classes in Guild War 2.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
the
It's
tankiest.
arguable.
So I don't even remember what day it was, but I had a conversation with Tam. And so when someone says the word warrior, it means a specific thing to me. That thing is not what Guild Wars is doing with it. And I think that's been one of my core disconnects with the game. So like I explained what I want out of a class.
You had the key word that was the one I've been missing for years. Because I've been trying to figure out, like, I know that the experience that you want out of Guild Wars 2 does exist, because I've seen it. I was just not sure how to get it to dovetail with what you wanted.
Yeah. I don't
Um,
remember exactly how I described it.
Well, the thing that you said that clicked for me was you're like, yeah, I'm really frustrated because the warrior doesn't feel tanky. It's like strong, but I don't feel tanky. I really want warrior to feel like a death knight.
Yeah, basically. Like
I was like-
ultimately, I want to run around like a Death Knight, and like I'm not killing stuff super fast, but like I'm also not ever going to die.
I mean, you can kill stuff super fast as a necromancer.
Yeah,
I've
like
seen it.
that. I mean, Ash and I proved that earlier.
Yeah.
We were running around doing heroic points, and yeah, like I mean, it's. I just don't want to die. Like I want to do stupid things and be able to survive.
Yep.
And apparently, Necromancer is that thing.
Yep. You found the place where that lives.
Yep. And
Because here's the problem that I had is like, Heart of Thorns is just brutal as a warrior. Like I mean,
Heart of Thorns is
So you can stop the as a warrior thing. Heart of Thorns is awful.
Yeah. It's not as bad as it originally was, but it's still pretty
there's
rough.
just
Yeah.
these roaming murder packs.
Pocket raptors,
Well, not even the Pocket Raptors. I'm talking about like the
snipers.
5 veteran whatever the hell
I mean,
things in a
mushrooms.
row.
Yeah, mushrooms charging around, knocking you over. Yeah.
Giant packs of chalk, you know.
Ugh.
Heart of Thorns is the hardest content in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like, so like I have tried to play Heart of Thorns for so long, and it's just like, as a warrior, I was having to carefully pick my way through the content to try and survive. And as a necromancer, I can
You
take
just kind
like
of wade through things.
I can take 4 or 5 elites or 4 or 5 veterans at a time, like without issue. Like I'm not necessarily killing it all super fast, but like I could just, those murder packs are not a big deal.
I think that the necromancer, especially when you go into Reaper with the greatsword build, feels the closest to the old EQ Shadow Knight of
Yes.
anything
Yeah.
I've played in a while.
Well, the ultimate irony of this pick, Tam, is way back in Guild Wars 1, I tried to make a Shadow Knight by
That game does
mixing.
not support it.
No, it doesn't. But I was trying to mix Warrior and Necromancer and make a Shadow Knight, and it would not work. Like it just was not a thing that blended well. So like that's the funny thing is, like I have always wanted to have a Necromancer Shadow Knight character in Guild Wars, but apparently it didn't exist in Guild Wars 1, but it does exist in Guild Wars 2.
There's currently a bit of a joke in the Ranger Elite spec, because there was this much maligned Ranger build that combined Ranger and Warrior and used a hammer, because that's the best crowd control you can possibly get, right?
Right.
Use a hammer on a Ranger. With your pet can knock things down, you can knock things down, everything's great. This build was awful. But the weapon they added for Ranger this time was hammer. So there are a few jokes referencing that old build.
Yes. The bunny thumper.
Yes.
But yeah, like it's been ridiculously fun running around as a Necro, and I'm actually playing, you know, it as a finger wiggler right now because I haven't finished get the points to do Reaper, and I'm enjoying my army of ugly children.
And you finished the Heart of Thorns story now, right?
I did. I finished Heart of Thorns. Like and I just like motored my way through it. Like it wasn't a big deal. And I can be a world tank, which is the thing that I always loved in games like, World of Warcraft, where I just am the thing that makes content easier for other people. Because like I am healing them too.
There's even a necromancer trait that causes people to not bleed out near you.
Yeah, that's real nice.
I mean, so like I am a giant Norn necromancer, which is funny. And to make this even weirder, I decided to go with the quote unquote stealthy subterfuge order. So like I'm Order of Whispers.
The Whispers.
My necromancer is also Order of Whispers.
And I'm as subtle as a pipe bomb, but somehow I am still stealthier than a lot of them. Yeah, it's maybe Guild Wars 2 has finally clicked.
Yay.
Well, and if you've finished Heart of Thorns, like you're far enough into the story that the story is getting better and better as you go.
Yes. Like I actually,
the game.
I feel like after Heart of Thorns, I think the story actually has its hooks in me for once.
Nice.
And now I'll pick up and do Living World 2 because like I just got pummeled during Living World 2 and
back up and do that. Yeah.
Living World 2 is definitely before Heart of Thorns, but yeah.
There's some
It's got some good stuff in it.
There's some difficult zones just post Heart of Thorns.
Well, yes, because anything with White Mantle in it. Because
White Mantle are brutal.
So Bloodstone Fen and Lake Doric are both pretty rough. But past that, things even out pretty well. And the Living Season 3 story is good and leads into Path of Fire, which is very good. And if you played Guild Wars 1, there's a lot of stuff in there that you will recognize what the references are to.
Yeah.
I don't actually know if I played enough of factions to know this stuff.
I played more factions than I played of any of the other Guild Wars 2 or Guild Wars expansions.
So you need to get yourself up to End of Dragons because that's where factions took place. And boy, are there a lot of references to factions that I keep having to look up because I did not play Guild Wars.
Nightfall was the one that I played most of. So the last expansion was more familiar to me.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm thinking of them out of order. It's Nightfall that I played more of.
Oh, okay. So Path of Fire will have a lot of stuff that you'll recognize. Yeah.
I played the class with a scythe.
Dervish, because Dervish was objectively the best class in that game. Their Dervish implementation in what is it? Spellweaver? No. Whatever the warrior thing is, Spellbreaker. Not nearly as interesting or good, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Bad.
The problem is like I tend to attach to specific weapons, and as good as Spellbreaker supposedly is, it will never feel reasonable to me to use a dagger ever.
You don't have to use a dagger in Spellbreaker.
The weapon that you unlock and the functionality of the elite spec have very little to do with one another. You think I use a shield on my Mesmer?
You used to.
Okay, fair. Sometimes I do. Mostly I do.
Mostly you don't, though.
I'm fairly sure I don't use a dagger on Virtuoso either.
I probably will.
But yeah, I don't know how much use Spellbreaker gets outside of World v World. It's been the main warrior spec there for a while.
That's the other thing that's happened this week is the night I started playing Guild Wars 2, I spent 2 hours in World v World.
Yeah.
I don't know why, I just did because it was fun. Like
it's actually pretty fun. Yeah.
I went in there because Thalen's like, hey, the daily's real easy to complete in World v World. Okay, let's get this done
in the guild hall. You don't need to step into World v World to complete that daily.
But then once I was in there, I'm like, hey, how do I learn how to ride a mount? And Thalen told me.
Oh no!
And I am missing 2 parts of that collection, I think.
Yeah, like
capturing more of it than I do.
Finishing the reward track.
Yeah, I think I've got two steps on the collection, and then I got my glider, so I can glide now.
Mm-hmm.
So like I feel immediately more useful now that I can glide, other than you can't glide in enemy territory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wait, you're almost done with the war mount? That's
Yeah,
impressive.
yeah, I've got like 2 pieces. I need to capture a keep, and I just haven't found a keep.
Well,
And
the problem there
Capturing a
is
keep is likely either you're going to get it done one night or you're not.
right,
You're not going
right,
to find
like,
one just randomly.
yeah, the problem there is that we've owned the majority of the keeps during prime time for
Wait, really?
yeah, no, like
Right now, we
we're
have
wrecking
7.
face.
we have 7 of the keeps right now. On the pie chart, we are over half of the pie chart.
Yeah, no, we've just been wrecking face in World v World. So
Who did we get paired with that's actually good?
Boreless Pass.
All right.
Yeah,
But,
Like,
like-
I've looked at
Who
our
we
like
get
death
paired
to
with
kills
is
ratio a
actually
couple of
good.
times, and it's actually been like good. Or
But,
kill
like-
death ratio, it's actually been above 1.
But the thing is like I actually did a lot of stuff to get to where I'm at because like I solo captured a tower
I mean, yeah.
as Necro.
As Necro, you can do that. Yeah.
But yeah, like so I spent 2 hours in World v World the other night, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it was.
Necro is one of the best roaming classes. It's like up there with Thief.
I mean, and like I hear I can spec into a healer spec for Necro, and I hear that there's other things I can do with Necro, so it feels like I have a lot of flexibility. So maybe this is fine. And I have to thank Final Fantasy XIV because prior to Final Fantasy XIV, there is no way in hell I would have ever accepted that I would like a caster. Just no way. Like that's not a thing that I ever would have mentally allowed in the math. But like I like casters in Final Fantasy XIV. I have everything to 80. It was all fun.
There are the difference between melee and caster, and really what casters even are in Guild Wars 2 is
Yeah.
different than you're probably used to.
Yeah.
Because like the bit where you're running around as a necromancer feeling tanky even though you're casting spells is not unique to the necromancer.
No.
Like it is in fact very hard to find your like standard wizard feel in Guild
Staff
Wars 2.
Elementalist, maybe? Well, okay, Staff Elementalist, definitely. But that's like the only one I can think of.
Pretty much.
Because Dagger Elementalist is basically a melee class. And then there's
Yeah.
actual Weaver.
I mean, if you want somebody that's squishy and throws fireballs, that's Guardian.
I'm on a Guardian right now, but this is not the squishy build. This is the build I use to heal people in fractals, except it also doubles as a ridiculous tank.
There's also a bunch of little subtle things that I did going in this time. Like I changed a bunch of my keybinds so that I have a more reasonable dodge button and a more reasonable weapon swap button. So like there's a bunch of efficiency changes I made that make functioning in the game just better overall. So like I think it's an additive effect of a bunch of things. But someday I might actually get to go to Cantha.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
You should. It's beautiful.
I did just finish the pre-Cantha story,
Yay.
so I can go to Cantha now. I mean, the game lets you do it in whatever order you want, so I could have
Right.
just gone to Cantha, but now I am caught up in the story.
Yeah. And the End of Dragon story is very, very good. And much like Endwalker in Final Fantasy XIV, it's the culmination of the ongoing story that has been, since the game started.
Yeah, I really want to get caught up before I touch End of Dragons. I mean, and honestly, like the Necro so far seems to be a class that I can just kind of power through story.
It's real good.
Absolutely that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of my biggest things is that the classes that I play are pretty bad at that because they're squishy.
There are some non-squishy Mesmer builds.
There is a non-squishy engineer build that I play, but it's not what I would call terribly interesting.
There is a slightly more interesting version of that build that is also not exactly squishy, but also less guaranteed safe, let's say.
Let's just press the flamethrower button.
Yes, let's just press the flamethrower button.
But also, now you can have a giant robot
It's
Yeah.
so
with
cool.
lasers.
I can do that as well.
It's a very good robot.
I'm actually like super interested in some of the other elite specs for Necro, if for no reason other than just unlocking the weapons that they have.
Yeah, At some point, I need to try the new Necro spec, which is a not tanky spec.
No, it is the opposite of tanky.
Yeah,
Which one
Sacrifice your health to do more damage.
Which one unlocks the pistol?
the new
That's
one.
Harbinger, it's that one.
The new one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like you're running around with a pistol and using elixirs and doing a lot of murder.
I was trying to describe what Necro in this game is like, and to me it feels like this weird mix of Warlock and Necromancer from Diablo and Discipline Priest.
Yeah.
Because like Discipline Priests have always been easy to solo on just because you'll never die. They are the caster tank of World of Warcraft classes.
Yeah, it's a cool niche, I think.
But like everyone that I know that is in my friends list, however, has been spending all of their time in Cantha zones.
Yeah, because Cantha's great.
It seems to be very well received.
So the zones are beautiful. The story is really good and is making a lot of use of members of our NPC friend group, our guild that haven't had a lot of screen time recently. Because like the stuff prior to this I sprued, it was predominantly Ritlock and Bram and some Timey. And End of Cantha, Ritlock and Bram, they're both kind of recovering from the events of that. Like they're not involved in Cantha. Instead, we've got Jory and Kaz and Timey and another Asuran friend, Gorek, who is great. And then the new people that we meet in Cantha who are across the board fantastic. And it's the culmination of everything we've done up to this point. Like it's the end of the dragon cycle. I just finished. I rolled credits this morning on it.
Wait,
And yeah, I loved it from start to finish. And I'm very interested to see where the story goes from here, because like there are a number of loose threads and things that are there to pick up on. I have a suspicion as to what in particular the next I guess living season, whatever it is, we'll be dealing with. But we'll see. But yeah, it's very well done. I just wish the final meta was not quite so brutal. It's rough.
We've had a number of different final metas, ranging from Dragon's Den, which is actually kind of difficult, except where there's been a lot of adjustment to it over time. Dragonfall, which is also kind of difficult.
I think people have got it pretty much down to a science at this point.
Maybe that'll happen with that one.
Maybe there've been a couple adjustments within the past couple of days that should deal with a couple of the things that were making it. But the main problem was there was one mechanic that a person could accidentally or on purpose basically subtract 2 minutes from the amount of time you have to kill the boss.
Oh no.
Yeah, and that led to a lot of toxicity in map chat. That's the main thing that the recent changes have we're dealing with and have hopefully taken care of that. Like I think at this point, like, somebody completely utterly failing that mechanic doesn't lose you any more time than skipping the mechanic entirely, which is what people had started doing. And succeeding at the mechanic does have a benefit, and they increased the benefit of that. So
that seems like the correct way to incentivize that sort of thing.
Yes. But yeah, it's a mechanic with green circles, which green circles are mean you're supposed to stand in the green circles. If you stood in a green circle, you were gonna get yelled at.
Wait, what?
Yeah. But overall, just everything has been really smooth. Like, there have been bugs, like clearly because there have been patches that have had patch notes talking about fixing all these bugs. But I think only ever encountered 2 of them, and they were like a hero point where the thing could spawn in a place where, like, underground, and I don't even remember what the other one was, something minor. Like, I never encountered any major bugs. No issues with, like, server problems, nothing. It's one of the cleanest MMO launches that I've experienced. And Jade bots are so cute. And ziplining around with your Jade bot feels really, really good. Like I wasn't sure like how much more could be added to the existing like different movement methods that mounts gave us, but Jade bot ziplines and like puttering about in a skiff both feel good. I enjoy them both.
So one thing that this isn't Cantha related because I'm obviously not in Cantha, but one thing that I have to say like this last couple days is it's just shocking how live the world feels all the time. Like I've not started any hero points that there hasn't been somebody also there
Yeah,
doing the hero points.
the whole mega server thing just works remarkably well because basically like technically there are different servers, but as of right, that only matters for world v world, and eventually once the stuff that they're testing now, it won't even matter for that. And I don't know if like worlds as they currently exist will even be a thing anymore. I don't know, but basically like all the players are in the same world, and just as players enter a zone, like if the zone fills up, a new instance gets spun up of that zone and players start getting put in that. If enough players leave an instance that it starts to, get, a low population, a thing pops up, requesting you switch to another instance and giving you a little bonus for doing it right now instead of waiting. But yeah, there's always people around. Like and if you need help with doing something, you can just throw up a mentor tag and usually someone will show up. Like even without you saying anything in map chat. If you say something in map chat like, such and such at the Apple tag, almost certainly people will show up and help.
Yeah, like when I was attempting to play Warrior a couple weeks ago, there was never a time that I died that I really had to respawn because almost always someone ran over and resurrected me.
Hey, it's free XP.
It is, and there's achievements for that. I'm really close to an achievement for that, so I'm absolutely resurrecting anybody I see out in the world.
Yeah, as long as you're not alone in the world.
Sadly, unfortunately, getting rezzed if you are AFK is actively, well, it's not even really that harmful anymore because
really.
while your gear does all break, it's not like fixing it costs anything.
Yeah, repairs are free.
I remember in alpha thinking that the way gear repair worked was the weirdest thing ever. That it just like every time you take a death, it damages an item until all your items are damaged.
And then if you have all of your items damaged, an item will break if you take another death.
Yeah.
Which mostly means you can die, 6 or 7 times, something like that, before you start seeing any ill effects of it.
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, all dungeons have repair anvils in them.
Yeah. Like if you're really worried you might need it, you can like carry some repair canisters. I've never used a repair canister. I've never needed to.
I have them in the bank.
I have a large number of them, but I don't know. Yeah, I haven't used any of them in a while. I think I did used to use them back when repairs weren't free.
Yeah, I could see using them then.
I think there's just a lot of things that end up giving them to you.
Well, the daily Black Lion rewards can give them to you.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure you get some in birthday rewards. Could be wrong.
Probably.
But
Maybe.
they do build
I don't know.
up.
But yeah, those and bank access are kind of starting to add up for me.
So soon then, Bell, in about a month, you can experience Super Adventure Box.
I have experienced Super Adventure
Oh,
Box
you have?
before. Yeah.
Okay.
I've also done a
Adventure Box
lot
is great.
of the Halloween event. Not necessarily the evil jumping puzzle tower, but like
Okay.
all of the
Like the
open world
labyrinth?
stuff. Yeah.
Mining candy corn and getting murdered by a skeleton with a chainsaw.
Yeah, that dude with the chainsaw catches up on you real fast.
Mm-hmm. At some point, now that we've got multiple people actively playing again, we should unlock the Cantha Guild Hall because it looks very pretty and is not
What-
underground.
What is the process of swapping guild halls?
We pay some cash to be allowed to claim it, and then we have to go into an instance and beat up the monsters that live there now.
Okay, kind of like we had to take over it the first time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to do that to claim it, and then we can swap between them at will.
I remember dying a lot when we were taking over Gilded Hollow.
So they've said that they have deliberately made the process less painful. Like they specifically said in the live stream before the game launched that like the intention was that a guild of 2 people could successfully claim the guild hall.
Okay.
So mostly it sounds like there's not so much stuff that you have to have groups dealing with simultaneously on a tight timer.
Okay. That was awful because I remember
Yeah.
we would send one pack out to go do this thing and another pack out to do another thing.
Yeah, it sounds like you can just go from group of enemies to group of enemies and deal with them, without having to worry about like racing through it. But apparently the area that is the guild hall was like a fairly important area in factions, I gather. I don't know.
My memory of factions is spotty at best and incomplete.
Yeah, pretty much everything I know about it comes from, reading the wiki.
I mean, I know I owned all of them and spent some time playing all of them, but I don't remember a lot from anything other than Nightfall. Okay, let's roll on to the next topic. Open world done right. Elden Ring versus Breath of the Wild versus Horizon.
Oh boy.
Man, this feels like this is a dramatic topic.
Are we trying to start fights?
I mean,
It
I've
sounds
already
like we're
apparently
going to start
done that.
fights, regardless of what we say next, we're going to start fights.
It's true. Well, I mean, okay, so playing Horizon and Elden Ring back to back and reading what people say about them has been really fascinating to me, because I feel like, I mean, I guess I'm gonna open up by starting a fight and saying that I found Breath of the Wild's exploration to be bad. Not because it wasn't interesting to like traverse the world, which I also didn't really like because I found climbing boring, but other people didn't, and that's fine. It's that at no point was I ever surprised by anything I ever found.
Yeah.
And I think that there's
The
this
structure of that game makes it basically impossible for it to surprise you.
Yes.
Because what do you find? Oh, it's a weapon. Oh, I don't care about weapons because weapons are inherently disposable.
Yeah, like even if you found the coolest weapon, you're like, all right, well, it's hard to get excited. And
you find a shrine, and the shrine will give you the same thing every shrine gives you.
yes, and there's been this interesting, like, Ubisoft has basically crafted the open world. Here's a map with a zillion icons on it,
Mm-hmm.
which is certainly open worldy, but never feels like exploration, because again, you're rarely surprised by what you find.
Mm-hmm.
Because it tells you, and like I am often going to a place because I know that's the place I want to go to, but there isn't that there's rarely, very rarely in Ubisoft games. In Horizon, it was done a little bit better, where yeah, there's something here, but you don't know what it is, and that I found neat. Although I've gotten to the point where I find those, like, here's a map with 1,000 icons on it, exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side of it, you have Elden Ring, where I think that the most interesting thing that Elden Ring is doing is the structure of its open world by far. Like, it's a Souls game, fine. Like, it's doing some stuff. The stuff that it's doing that's like new for a Souls game is new, in my opinion, in such like specific ways that, to call back to an earlier part of the podcast, it's like changing the points value on an aspect warrior. It's kind of down in the weeds, but wandering around and finding things is inherently interesting, because not only, like, you don't really have to do it. There's nothing tracking your progress, but almost every time I wander into some random cave or a building that I saw in the distance or whatever, there's something interesting there. It's usually a bunch of fights, which means a bunch of XP if I manage to get through it. It's a little portion of the game that I can decide to challenge myself against or not, much like, a jumping puzzle or climbing or whatever the case may be. And at the end, there's some item. And recently I realized that I had some vitally important item that I picked up randomly in a cave, and it was a huge deal. I recently just I found like a random cave and went into the random cave, and there was a real nasty twin boss at the bottom of it. At which point, after beating, I got enough to get 3 levels.
You found a cave that had an item that was super cool, and so you told me, hey, you should go to this cave and fight this boss, which I have been doing for about an hour and a half before I finally killed it. And now I have a cool new sword that scales off of my intelligence. It's a wizard sword.
Yeah, and the fact that there isn't much telling you, they tell you what you need to do and broadly where you need to go for it. But beyond that, it's kind of find your way into places. And as a result, it means there's this like, I mean, I'm level 75 mostly because it turns out it's super lucrative to just wander around and explore. I feel rewarded for wandering around and being like, hey, what's that over there? I want to go explore that. And it's one of those things that I often feel like open world games don't hit, where the bit where you're actually surprised at what you go find doesn't really exist and makes it hard to call it exploration, because the whole concept of exploration is you're going out into the unknown and finding new things.
I mean, I feel like you're kind of describing a lot of why I originally was super into Elder Scrolls and Fallout games.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because you kind of just go off in a direction and you don't know what you're going to find.
I would
Those
also
games
say
are also pretty good at putting random stuff that you may or may not know what it is
Mm-hmm.
in weird places.
I pretty regularly will pick up, New Vegas or Skyrim and start again. And I don't know how many times I have played at it. I've only beaten it once or twice, but I'll pick it up and play it for a while. And each time I start fresh, I don't know if there's ever been a playthrough where I didn't find something that I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
A thing that is very cool about this game that I know people talk about how much they love in like Skyrim and Fallout is like, oh, you see some weird like thing on the distance, you can go there. Like that is true in Skyrim, but I feel like the things I see on the distance are way more striking in this game. Like people would talk about like, hey, there's a mountain over there. Maybe you can go wander to it. Isn't that cool? And I'm like, yeah, and in this game, there is a giant mansion on a spire of rock jutting out above the ocean. How am I going to get there? That's interesting. Let's try and figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely using its like super dramatic, it's like melodramatic goth aesthetic
Mm-hmm.
to its advantage in an open world game, which is cool. Like I like when a game is using its aesthetic to drive itself, to drive its game. And Horizon does the same thing, where you've got this huge thing in the distance and you can get there and check it out and it's relevant. And it doesn't have the same like, hey, you can find something game changing there, but sometimes you can. And I think that's a cool bit of functionality.
Yeah.
Everything about Elden Ring seems like it is a game I would enjoy other than the gameplay. I'm just not willing to suffer for the moments of joy.
Yeah, which is and honestly, it's the thing that I find the most frustrating about it is there's no reason this game needs to be tuned the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not adding that much to the experience for me to have a health pool that evaporates
in a shockingly fast,
basically any meaningful attack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, because I am less upset about that, but one of the things that I had the most fun with is playing this game in co-op. I thought the moment of playing this game in co-op and going into a big boss battle with Tam at my side was very fun. And unlike previous Souls games, like in previous Souls games, bosses were tuned to fight one player. And bringing a second player into a boss fight basically meant like you could just very easily win that boss fight. It became the drop in difficulty was almost like felt insulting, because by the point you do that, you have probably spent a lot of time learning how to fight that boss, and like mostly like how to you've mostly like really struggled through it, and then like the first time you play with another player, it's just like, oh, this is easy now. This feels almost insultingly easy. And I will say, like, the game does a good job at designing bosses that are able to make it interesting to fight with multiple players.
Now I just wish the game were designed for you to be able to play through it with your friends in co-op, because
yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah, this game so frustrating.
This game needs to reward multiplayer at all.
It's not even reward multiplayer, in my opinion. It's accept that if this game were like, hey, do you want to just drop in with a small party of your friends and wander this world?
Yeah.
I would be clamoring to get people to play this, because at that point, the combat difficulty is way less important than the bit that I'm running around a legitimately hostile world with friends, coming up with strategies and so on.
Yep.
But the co-op is just such a mess. I hate it.
I
love the idea.
It's the best implementation of Dark Souls co-op ever.
What's that thing we keep saying? Better is not the same as good?
Yeah.
The bar, it is very low.
And the thing is that like Elden Ring is probably not going to make a game of the year for me, because it has too many flaws like that to really just like be outstanding. But it didn't have to be that way. And it bugs me. It's like, it's one of those, like, I wish they would get over themselves, because the game that they would make is so good.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like there's a really good game. There's a better game there that isn't approachable for all people. Like, and it's whether or not you want to multiplayer it, whether or not you don't want Dark Souls combat. You know, there's like a bunch of ifs, but there's a very, I don't know, dogmatic approach to what a Souls game is.
Yeah.
That it is followed.
Yeah. Dogmatic is the absolute right word for it. And it's one of those things where it's like, this game could be a genre unto itself. And I'm really excited about other studios. It's one of the reasons why I love Jedi Fallen Order so much. I really enjoy other studios getting a sense of what is going on, like what makes this game good, and then delivering something more approachable, or that tweaks the genre in interesting ways.
I do really like the gothic aesthetic in this game. Like, I don't know, for like this sort of gothic historical fantasy thing feels like something that I don't necessarily see as much. Like, I see a lot more high fantasy in this. I guess you see it more kind of in The Witcher, although I feel like The Witcher is also trying to do a slightly different aesthetic as well.
This and The Witcher have a lot of overlap. Like, Witcher cares more about characters, and this is more kind of mythology.
Yeah.
But it's definitely...
They both feel like they kind of come from that Slavic tradition of mythology.
Yeah, or like Grimm's fairy tales, but like the extremely original Grimm's fairy tales. You know, the kind of mythology where everyone knows everyone else because there's only like 9 people.
And you are the outsider who knows none of them.
Yeah.
But everyone assumes you know them. It is a fun map to explore and to fill in. It could definitely use some like I am not playing this. Like, people are like, you should play this with a notepad. No, I'm never gonna do that. But they should really have an in-game notes feature.
Yes, it's also extremely true, because
that wouldn't be as hardcore.
Oh no!
I mean,
it's supposed to be obtuse. Like, that's part of the experience, isn't it?
Doesn't have to be.
I feel like putting a text entry notepad app is not changing the level of hardcoreness.
It's true.
Makes it logistically more reasonable to play this game. Like,
for a second, I thought you were going to Honestly, that just makes me think of stuff like Etrian Odyssey, which does not give you a map. They expect you to make the map. In fact, that is your objective, is to make the map.
Yeah, I mean, I really wish that Hollow Knight would have. I wish that Hollow Knight used the same map functionality as this game does.
Where you have a big empty map that
Well,
you
where it tells you where to go to fill in the map.
Hmm.
Because my biggest frustration with Hollow Knight is I could never, ever, ever find those stupid map locations. And so when people were like, "Oh yeah, you just go here and here. It's not that hard." I'm like, I don't know where you're talking about because I open the map and I see a little starting point and that's the entire thing I see. It doesn't fill in as I go. It doesn't fill in, in any sort of way. Whereas this is like, no, it doesn't fill in until you find the map of the area, but it's going to tell you once you're in that part of the world, it's going to tell you where the map of the area is. And that's super useful.
In a very obtuse Dark Souls way.
Yeah, but in a consistent way that once you figure out, you're like, aha.
I feel like that thing you just said is also true of Hollow Knight because the map maker hums and leaves a trail of papers.
Yeah, but I can't open my map and say, what direction do I need to go?
It's true. You cannot.
Which is, I think, the most valuable thing that this game does. I could say, oh, I need to go here to unlock the map. And I know it's not going to necessarily tell me how to get to the map location, but it'll put me at least in the ballpark. Because I knew about the map guy and the humming. I just didn't see him.
I will say there are two areas in Hollow Knight where the game intentionally withholds the map. One of them is kind of early-ish. It's Fog Canyon. You just can't get to the map without double jump and an upgrade you don't have until like near the end of the game. But also that area is tiny. Basically two upward hallways. But then there's Deep Nest.
Mm-hmm.
And in Deep Nest, Cornifer is not humming. He does not have a trail of papers. He is hiding because he is terrified of Deep Nest. I did not have a map of Deep Nest for a long time when I played the game the first time, and it was terrible.
Yeah. Like I recently went back and replayed all of Hollow Knight with a guide to tell me where to go to get every map, and it was much better. I enjoyed that game a lot more. I just don't necessarily love playing a game with a guide open in the other screen. I was actually having a similar frustration moment here where I didn't have any map areas for the place I was exploring, and then went to the one non-standard visual in the empty map space and was like, all right, what is this? And it turned out that's the map space. Like that's the thing that uncovers the map. But yeah, I really enjoy exploring. I like when exploring both surprises me and feels rewarding.
Yeah, it feels like exploration.
Yeah, and not a checklist. Like there's a time and a place, and I certainly liked some checklist games, but it's not always what I'm looking for.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to wander around.
And I think that's probably time.
Seems like
Any
it.
final thoughts?
No.
Don't think so.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good
Good night.
Good night.
See you.